Washington, D.C. is arguably the most powerful city on Earth. But have you ever wondered about the people who actually own this city? We're talking a woman who turned one radio station into an empire that now shapes how 25 million people vote, a kid who bought his first company at 16 with hog farm money, and a family that secretly runs the tech behind the CIA, the FBI, and the Pentagon. Let's get into it. Number 8. The Hughes-Liggins family. We're kicking this off with a story so raw, so improbable, and so genuinely inspiring that it honestly should be taught in every business school in the country. But it isn't, because not enough people actually know it. So let me fix that right now. Cathy Hughes started with nothing. And actually, that's not even accurate, because she started with less than nothing. Back in 1980, she scraped together just enough to buy a single AM radio station in Washington, D.C. on borrowed money, with a debt structure so aggressive that most lenders wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole. And then the pressure got so brutal that she couldn't afford to keep the lights on at her own home. She got evicted. So here's what she did. She packed up everything, took her young son Alfred, and moved directly into the radio station's offices. They slept on the floor. She cooked meals on a hot plate, and she worked 20-hour days to keep that station alive, building an audience one single loyal listener at a time. Now look at what that one station became. It's called Urban One today, a publicly traded media giant spanning 55 radio stations, TV One, a whole digital network reaching over 25 million listeners every single week. And in 1999, Cathy Hughes made history as the first African-American woman to ever lead a publicly traded company on the U.S. stock exchange. Let that sink in. From a hot plate on a radio booth floor to ringing the bell on NASDAQ, the family's net worth today sits somewhere between $250 and $350 million. But here's the part that matters more than the money. They control the primary media pipeline to Black voters in this entire region. Every mayoral candidate, every council member, every presidential campaign that needs to reach Black D.C. routes their message through these stations. The family doesn't just have a seat at the political table. In a lot of ways, they're the ones who set the table. Cathy Hughes built her empire on a hot plate. Our next man built his on something even more unexpected, a struggling hog farm that he bought from his own father at just 16 years old. Number 7. The Warren Thompson family. Warren Thompson's origin story is the kind of thing that makes you want to call your parents and apologize for not doing more with your life. Because today, he runs Thompson Hospitality, the largest minority-owned food and facilities management company in the entire United States. We're talking a company on track to blow past $1 billion in annual revenue, employing over 6,000 people. His personal net worth sits between $300 and $400 million, and he built every single dollar of it from the ground up. But you have to hear how it started. Thompson was mowing lawns at 14. By 16, his father's commercial hog-raising business was struggling. So young Warren looked at the situation, did the math, and bought the business from his own dad. At 16 years old, that was his first leveraged buyout. Then he used the profits from those hogs to literally fund his college degree and his MBA. His first real company vehicle was an old blue school bus with a brand new engine that he bought at auction to deliver produce. That beat-up bus became the foundation of an empire. Today, that empire holds dining contracts with Fortune 100 companies, hospital networks, and universities all across the country, plus a growing restaurant portfolio inside places like Reagan Airport and the Pentagon Center. The man feeds the institutions that run the region, but here's the detail that tells you exactly who Warren Thompson really is. His company runs the dining services at 18 historically Black colleges, including the legendary Howard University. And his newest restaurant concept? It's called Peach's Southern Kitchen, named after his grandmother, a prominent midwife who reportedly delivered over 1,200 babies in rural Virginia, and it uses her authentic Southern recipes. He built a billion-dollar company and named its proudest new piece after the woman who inspired all of it. That's not branding, that's roots. And he designed the whole operation to run as a permanent family business, with his brother and sister both in senior executive roles. Now, Thompson controls how Washington eats. Our next family controls how Washington gets built. And their story kicks off with a grandfather who held a door open, literally, for 41 straight years. Number 6. The Peebles family. Don Peebles is the kind of man who takes the backstory itself and turns it into a power move. He was born at the hospital that's now part of Howard University, started out as a congressional page on Capitol Hill, and by the age of 23, he already had his own real estate appraisal firm. Then the mayor appointed him to lead the district's tax review board, and Peebles used that seat to build the most successful tax appeal firm in D.C. history. In other words, this man learned exactly how the game was scored before he ever placed a single bet. His net worth today sits between $800 million and a full $1 billion. The Peebles Corporation is the largest African-American-owned real estate development firm in America. With over 17 million square feet across D.C., New York, Boston, and beyond, a total portfolio valued at over $6 billion. And he builds with a rule baked right in. His model mandates that minority and women-owned businesses hold at least 30% of the equity and the work on every single project. He didn't just break into a brutal industry, he rewrote its rules on his way in. Speaking of building lasting wealth from the ground up and protecting what lasts longest, your health, that's what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 Smart Ring. It tracks your heart rate, your sleep, and your workouts straight from your finger. A week on a single charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The part that got us was the price. Under $40, a fraction of what the big-name rings cost, because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the one detail in Don Peebles' story that hits hardest of all. But here is the personal detail that makes this whole story land like a thunderclap. Don Peebles' grandfather spent 41 years working as a doorman at a major D.C. hotel. Not the owner, not a manager. A doorman, opening doors for other people for 41 years. So Don Peebles grew up, went back to that very same hospitality world, and bought the building. He purchased it outright and converted it into a luxury Marriott hotel. Read that again. He went back to the system that employed his grandfather as a doorman, and he bought it. That isn't a success story. That's a statement that echoes across 3 generations. And the next generation is already in the building. His wife Katrina directs the design and philanthropy, and his son Donahue is already running East Coast acquisitions. The Peebles aren't building a company, they're building a dynasty. But if Don Peebles buys the buildings, our next man built something nobody on earth had ever built before him, and became the first black billionaire in American history doing it. Number 5. The Robert L. Johnson family. Robert L. Johnson carries a very specific kind of weight in this city because he did something that had simply never been done, and then had to figure out how to do it all over again. In 2001, after selling black entertainment television to Viacom for $3 billion, Johnson officially became the first African-American billionaire in United States history. And get this, he built BT right here in Washington, D.C., from a $15,000 personal loan. 15 grand turned into a $3 billion cultural institution. His fortune today is estimated at around $1 billion, built mostly through RLJ Lodging Trust, a publicly traded company that owns 96 hotels with roughly 21,000 rooms across more than 20 states. But the man didn't stop at media and hotels. In 2002, he bought the NBA's Charlotte expansion franchise for $300 million, making him the first African-American majority owner of a major pro sports team in the modern era. And here's a detail that says a lot about the era he was operating in. When Johnson bought that team, there was no established pipeline of black institutional money to invest alongside him. No big HBCU endowments writing checks, no black private equity giants at that scale. He was basically out there alone, a pioneer with no map. He eventually sold the controlling stake to Michael Jordan in 2010, but make no mistake, the team existed because of his vision first. The infrastructure to fully back a man like him just didn't exist yet. Then there's the chapter that reshaped 2 empires at once. His 2002 divorce from Sheila Johnson resulted in a $400 million settlement, one of the largest in history. And both of them walked away and built separate massive empires, which is either the best or the worst advertisement for marriage you've ever heard, depending entirely on how you look at it. Today, Johnson still steers RLJ as executive chairman and remains one of the most sought-after voices in the country on black business and access to capital. And that $400 million settlement? It didn't end a story. It started a brand new one. Because the woman on the other side of that deal was about to build a billion-dollar empire that was entirely, unapologetically, her own. Number 4. The Sheila Johnson Newman family. Sheila Johnson's story is really two stories. There's what she built alongside someone else, and then there's what she built the very moment she decided to build alone. And trust me, the second story is by far the more interesting one. After co-founding BET and walking away from that $3 billion Viacom sale, Sheila did not sit still. In 2005, she founded the Salamander Collection, a luxury hospitality brand built entirely on her own vision, her own taste, and her own money. The crown jewel is Salamander Middleburg, a Forbes 5-star resort sprawled across 340 acres of Virginia horse country, one of the most exclusive luxury escapes on the entire East Coast. Her personal net worth today sits at $1.2 billion, and here's the key. Every dollar of growth since the BET exit is 100% her own. Her DC power play came when she snapped up the former Mandarin Oriental and rebranded it as Salamander Washington, D.C., instantly making it the go-to venue for diplomatic summits in the capital. And then there's the sports, which is genuinely historic. Sheila Johnson is a principal shareholder in Monumental Sports, making her the only African-American woman to simultaneously hold ownership stakes in 3 major pro sports franchises at once: the NBA's Wizards, the NHL's Capitals, and the WNBA's Mystics. 3 teams. 1 woman. The first of her kind to ever do it. She even lives on a historic horse farm once owned by Winston Churchill's daughter-in-law, an estate that used to host Jacqueline Kennedy. Sheila Johnson calls it home now. But here's the detail that genuinely stops people in their tracks. In 2005, Sheila remarried. And the man she married was Judge William T. Newman Jr., the very same judge who had presided over her divorce from Robert Johnson just 3 years earlier. You heard that right. She married her divorce judge. Now, make of that whatever you want. But as power moves go, that one has a very particular kind of audacity to it. The woman simply does things her own way. Sheila Johnson owns the rooms where Washington's biggest deals get signed. Our next man bought a piece of Washington's biggest deal of them all, a $6 billion NFL franchise. Number 3. The Magic Johnson family. Earvin Magic. Johnson might be the single most impressive case study of athlete-turned-mogul in American history because his transformation into a billionaire was not luck, it was not inherited, and it was not some one-time lucky exit. It was a deliberate, methodical, decades-long construction of a genuine empire. His net worth is estimated at $1.5 billion, and the anchor isn't some celebrity endorsement deal. It's a controlling stake in Equitrust, a life insurance company the family grew from $16 billion to over $26 billion in assets. That is a serious, heavyweight financial operation. The Washington, D.C. chapter landed in July of 2023, when Johnson joined the ownership group that bought the Washington Commanders for a staggering $6.05 billion. Just think about what that represents for a second. The Commanders. Washington's NFL team, one of the most culturally embedded franchises in the entire country. Magic Johnson now holds a significant equity piece of the football team that plays in the capital of the United States. And his group owns a stake in the Washington Spirit Soccer Club, too. But here's my favorite part. Through a joint venture called Sodexo Magic, his family holds the dining and concession contracts at Reagan National Airport, at major corporate offices across the region, and, wait for it, at the Federal Reserve Bank. So let me put that plainly. Magic Johnson's family literally feeds the people who set the country's monetary policy, from the basketball court to the Federal Reserve. That's a level of business reach almost no athlete in history has ever touched. And beyond the boardrooms, Magic and his wife Cookie, married over 30 years now, use their massive platform to completely transform the national conversation around HIV at a time when fear and stigma were running the show. That took a different kind of courage entirely. Now, Magic built a $1.5 billion empire, and that is absolutely staggering. But our next man is worth nearly 10 times that number, and his story is equal parts stunning triumph and genuine cautionary tale. Number 2. The Robert F. Smith family. Robert F. Smith is one of those figures where the full story is way richer and more complicated than the headline, and the headline is already remarkable. Smith is the founder and CEO of Vista Equity Partners, consistently ranked as one of the best-performing private equity firms in the entire history of finance. His personal fortune is estimated between $10.8 and $12 billion. Vista operates exclusively in enterprise software, manages over $100 billion in assets, and has delivered roughly 30% annual returns since the year 2000. It has quietly become the fourth largest enterprise software organization on the planet, trailing only Microsoft, Oracle, and SAP. And in DC, Smith uses that power in remarkable ways. He advises congressional committees on access to capital, gave $20 million to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and became the first African American to ever sign the Giving Pledge. But the moment that made him a legend came in 2019, when he stood up at the Morehouse College graduation and announced, with no warning whatsoever, that he was paying off the entire graduating class's student debt. $34 million on the spot. He erased the debt of every single graduate in that crowd and changed the national conversation about what wealth could actually do. And then there's the part that complicates the picture, because Washington never has just one story. In 2020, Smith entered into an agreement with the Department of Justice to resolve a tax investigation, paying a record penalty of $139 million tied to offshore accounts. He avoided criminal charges by cooperating as the key witness in what became the largest individual tax fraud case in American history. So the same man who wiped out a college class's debt also wrote a 9-figure check to stay out of a courtroom. Triumph and cautionary tale, living in the same person. The personal life is just as cinematic. His 2015 wedding on the Amalfi Coast reportedly required over 100 private helicopter trips just to move the custom staging up the cliffs, with live performances from John Legend and Seal. And his real estate includes a Malibu compound reportedly valued over $200 million, plus the historic New York estate once built by Madam C.J. Walker herself. And now we come to number 1. To a man who once stood at his office window and watched his own car get repossessed from the company parking lot, and then calmly walked back to his desk and built the largest black-owned company in all of America. Number 1. The Stewart family. And here we are, number 1. And David L. Stewart's story earns this spot, not just because of the numbers, but because of everything that happened long before those numbers ever showed up. Stewart grew up in a small, segregated town in Missouri, in a household without indoor plumbing, facing the kind of structural disadvantage that stops most people cold before they ever even start. He didn't start. He started anyway. He founded a company called Worldwide Technology in 1990, and in the early years, it nearly died. The cash flow crises got so brutal that Stewart went for long stretches without paying himself a dime. And then came the moment that defines the entire man. One afternoon, he stood at his office window and watched his personal car get repossessed, towed right out of his own company's parking lot, in front of everyone. He watched it happen. And then he turned around, walked back to his desk, and got back to work. Now look at where that work led. Today, Worldwide Technology generates over $20 billion in annual revenue, employs more than 10,000 people, and stands as the largest black-owned company in the entire United States. The Stewart family fortune is estimated at $12.8 billion, the highest of any black family in America. But here is what truly sets them apart from everyone else on this list. WWT doesn't just work with the federal government. It runs the government's most sensitive digital systems. Let that sink in for a real second. The cybersecurity and cloud infrastructure for the Department of Defense, the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA, the most classified agencies in the country, runs through a company that a black man from rural Missouri built from the ashes of a parking lot repossession. He broke in back in the 90s through a minority business program, earned the security clearances, delivered flawlessly, and never ever looked back. And the legacy goes even deeper than the empire. His son founded the animation studio behind the Oscar-winning Short Hair Love. His daughter's company produced the Oscar-winning film Manchester by the Sea. 2 Academy Awards, in one family that also happens to secure the CIA's digital infrastructure. The Stewards even funded the effort to finally get NASCAR's first black driver the historic trophy his family was owed. Because for this family, the wealth was never just about stacking money. It was about making sure the people who earned their moment finally got to have it. So that's 8 richest black families in Washington, D.C., and there's a single thread running through every last one of them. A woman who slept on a radio station floor and built a media empire. A man who sold hogs at 16 and turned it into a billion-dollar company. A grandson who bought the very building his grandfather worked as a doorman. Washington, D.C. has always been about who really holds the power. Now you know exactly who some of them are. So drop your most surprising pick down in the comments, smash that like button, and if you want to know about more rich black families across the globe, make sure to subscribe to Black Status. See you on the next one.